man, blanket apology in this video for any time I have to say anything in Spanish. Hello, angels. It is Lavender, and as usual, we're here in the Music Corner to talk about music. Specifically, this time, regional Mexican music. And the reason for that is the release of the new Fuerza Regida album that just came out overnight. It hasn't even been out for 24 hours at the time of me making this video, and it is a pretty drastic change in sound. For the most part, this record contains only a few regional Mexican songs and a lot of other tracks influenced by various strains of hip-hop and dance music, and people are reacting in all kinds of different ways. So while the fan discourse won't be settled on this record for quite a long time, I'm going to go ahead and throw my hat in the ring because in this instance, I have some specific knowledge that I can lend to the record and perhaps the discourse. Part of that comes from the fact that my beat is the Hot 100, and last year regional Mexican music erupted onto the Hot 100, which included numerous Fuerza Regida songs, which got me pretty familiar with the group, with their sound at the time, and their style at the time, and it's why I'm able to recognize this new record as such a major shift in sound and such a subversion of expectations for a lot of their fans. And also because I got to hear this album more than a month ago at a private event where the band invited a handful of journalists to give the record a try. And I will say, it was one of the stranger events I've been to as a professional music journalist. It took place at the Sony lot here in LA, a place I had been to before, but I was in a specific part of the lot that I had never been to with a handful of my colleagues, and it was interesting. I will say Fuerza Regida, frontman Jesus Ortiz and company were quite late, but that's okay. You kind of learn to expect that with artists at events like this, but it was what they did with us in the meantime that was so interesting. At one point while we're waiting to go in, this guy walks in, this guy, this puppet, this alien guy, and colleagues of mine start to sort of whisper to themselves, sort of murmur, and say, you know, that's Lil Mayo. And they're like, oh my God, Lil Mayo's here. And like, I hate it. I hate to be the boomer in that situation, but I went, guys, who the fuck is Lil Mayo? Turns out Lil Mayo is this alien with like 1.5 million Instagram followers. I guess he's famous in LA, and because he was in a Filthy Frank video, I wouldn't know, but I got to meet Lil Mayo, and as I've been told by numerous people in the month since this event, that's quite an honor, I suppose. But after introducing myself to Lil Mayo, because we were already on the Sony lot and didn't know what to do with a bunch of journalists hovering around in the lobby of one of the buildings, they took us to the Sony Museum, which is full of paraphernalia from various properties that Sony owns, including a bunch of Breaking Bad stuff that I took pictures of. It was very strange, very funny. I think everyone was in a pretty good mood as a result of having something to do while we waited, and while I was having a conversation with some of my colleagues, I turned around and the Seinfeld set is set up in there, and of course Lil Mayo is taking pictures on the Seinfeld set. They somehow rigged the puppet to burst through the door like Kramer. Strange, truly strange. In a way that these events typically are not. But after all of that strangeness, we finally got huddled into a boardroom where we get to eat, and Jesus Ortiz came out to introduce us to the record, some of the ideas behind it, some of the reasons and inspiration for the change of sound. He spoke on the need to evolve creatively, the need to try new things, to not stick to the regional Mexican route forever. He repeatedly spoke on Sony's insistence that Fuerza Regida drop an album this year, and kind of had this attitude of, well, if we need to drop an album this year, we might as well get creative with it.
This album is really different because we're getting out of our comfort zone. We're doing something really different. The idea started from like around February, because in October we dropped the album, and in February we dropped the EP, and then the idea started where like we had, from the top 10, we had like 7 songs on top 10. So I was like, man, what are we gonna drop next? If we drop something next, like the same thing, we're gonna saturate the market, like with the same type of music. So the idea started with the team. We were like, we gotta do something different. So what we did, we flew out the riders, like 40 riders to Colombia, and we started working on this album that's really different from what we would like originally do. We wanted to go out Mexico, finish the album, so we got a bunch of tracks in here that are different. The genre is dance. I'm ready for you guys to listen to it. Let's go.
He specifically referred to Drake's Honestly Nevermind, in particular the song Sticky, as being an example of the hip housey dance and rap flavors that the record was pulling from, and you can definitely hear that once he started to play us clips from the album. While there was still a couple regional Mexican tracks in the mix, for the most part, it was a dance-flavored rap record full of these very kind of summer-ready bangers, and he kept talking about it and kept referencing back to how this was a summer album, it was full of summer bops, and listening to it, yeah, he's right. J.O.P. was also hilarious the entire time he was singing and rapping along to these songs, coming right up to our cameras and rapping right in the faces of journalists. Dancing and rapping with Lil Mayo, which was truly surreal to experience. He also told us some really funny stories. There's a track on this record that's a collaboration with Marshmello, who they had worked with before, and he told us a funny story about Marshmello claiming that Jersey club music is sort of played out, and he said, well, maybe that's the case, but not with Mexicans. And he also made sure to specifically point out the couple of songs on the record where he really dug into his feelings and joked that everything else on the album is just about sex and drugs. Afterwards, we had a little Q&A with him, too, with some of the journalists, and he was asked what he expected from the fans reacting to this record and the fact that they were wandering so far away from the regional Mexican style that put them on the map, and he kind of brushed it off, to be honest. I think he said something along the lines of, like, you know, fans know us, we do crazy shit, this is crazy shit, and we think they'll ride with us. Whether that is the case or isn't the case is obviously to be determined, but when I spoke to him directly, he also made sure to note that Fuerza Regida is already working on the next thing, so whether or not this sound clicks with fans in the way that they were hoping, there's already something up in the tank coming soon. Then on the way out, he gave us an assload of merch, boxes and boxes of merch that all of the journalists there were just allowed to pour through. This is from that. I'll show pictures of all of the merch I got. Very strange event, but honestly, genuinely very fun. Which is why I was excited after sitting on these stories and this footage for a full month. The album finally dropped yesterday at the time of recording this. It is Friday. Last night, there was a private special listening party here in LA at Don Quixote, which I have noted in the past is one of the strangest venues in all of Los Angeles, in my opinion. But it was cool. It was a cool sort of release party. I didn't anticipate the band to perform the album in full, but that's exactly what happened. J.O.P. took the stage with this huge posse behind him, and it was just a broadly fun event. They were pressing Fuerza Regida tote bags. They had some influencer-type setups where people could take pictures with their stuff in the new album. It was cute. And yeah, after spending a month on and off listening to some of the snippets that I took from the original listening party, hearing it at the release party last night, hearing it performed live with an energy that I wasn't really anticipating when I showed up to that event, and then listening to it again today, the record has really started to grow on me. I can say that up to this point, I kind of thought Fuerza Regida were more singles artists, and I think I'm far from the only person to think that, but I don't know, maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome, but this record has just started to grow on me the more and more I heard it, and the more proper environments I heard it in. Now, because of the embargo and because of the secret release and all of this, it is hard to gauge where exactly the opinions on this record stand in the immediate aftermath. There's also a language barrier between myself and a lot of Fuerza Regida fans, admittedly. But I don't know. I think this change in style gives the group a cross-genre and perhaps even cross-cultural viability that may not have existed before. I know while I'm a big fan of artists like Fuerza Regida and Peso Pluma, a lot of non-Spanish-speaking American contemporary pop music listeners are not able to cross that bridge. But some of these songs are just too goddamn catchy and sound too much like Drake to not at least generate a little bit of momentum. It would be a pretty big surprise if at least a couple of these songs don't land on the Hot 100 from streams of this record alone next week. And I'm expecting this thing to make a pretty big wave on the Billboard 200 too. I mean, I think there is a lot to look forward to as the reaction to this record, both critically and commercially, unfolds. And just personally, it's been a pretty interesting journey to take with it. And it will always probably be the standout record for me in the Fuerza Regida catalog, specifically because I was granted this access to it. So yeah, if you're a regional Mexican music fan, please slide up and let me know what you think of the record, what you think of the change in sound, whether you think Fuerza Regida will continue down this lane going forward, or perhaps try to return to their regional Mexican origins. There's a lot to consider, but man, was it a fun experience leading up to the release of this record. And I will be back with another video that is more hip-hop oriented very soon. Mwah.